So Mark, what's going through your mind in 1985 when you find out you're selected by the New York Giants?
I was just happy to be drafted. You know, back then it wasn't televised like it is today, and I went in the 4th round, and I didn't know much about the Giants. In fact, one of my buddies who was with me that day, he kind of had to fill me in on what the Giants were all about. He told me about Zeke Mowat, he told me about Phil Simms, he told me about this great coach they had, Bill Parcells, who, I really didn't have much experience. I didn't know that much about him. But when Bill Parcells got on the phone and I talked to him, I had a sense that this guy was something special, and when I got to the Giants and I saw the guys, I kind of figured that they were going places.
With all that talent that they had defensively, what was it like to go against those guys in practice? And it had to be a great benefit for you to prepare to play in the NFL when you're going against great defensive players.
Oh, yeah. We used to come out and play at Giant Stadium when I was at Notre Dame. We played Army, and we'd walk through the stadium the day before. And while we were up there, the Giants were coming out for their practice. And I remember someone pointing out Carl Banks and Lawrence Taylor. And they were just standing there. And I'm thinking, who are those guys? They're huge. Like, oh, those are the linebackers. And at college, I was used to going up against 6'1", 6'2" linebackers, 220 maybe. And here, all these guys were like 6'4", 6'5", 250, 260. And I remember thinking to myself, I would hate to have to be a tight end on this team and play these guys every day in practice. But you're right. I mean, having to do that really made me a better tight end. It was hard. It was enjoyable. And of course, everybody talks about Lawrence Taylor, and he was by far the best football player I ever saw. But the hardest guy to play against practice against was Carl Banks. I mean, you just couldn't block him. He was one of the toughest guys I've ever run across in the NFL. And he, more than anybody, made me the blocking tight end that I became.
Let's go back to your first training camp. I guess it was at Pace back then, right?
Yeah.
The Giants had Zeke Mowat, but when did it click in for you that, what, I can make it at this level and do well for myself?
I was doing so much work during that training camp because for a long time it was just me and Zeke. And Zeke, the one thing about Zeke Mowat, he was a hard worker. I mean, he never slacked off, and he was a great tight end. So I wasn't planning on contributing much. He was never a guy who was going to let anybody take a rep away from him. So the Pittsburgh Steelers game, last preseason game of the season, Zeke blew his knee out. And it wasn't until then that I realized I was the only other tight end on the roster. I know that Parcells hesitated to put me in. I could see him looking around the sidelines. Finally, he just said, go in, and I went in the huddle, and I remember Rob Carpenter saying, this is it, man, And I think at that point, I realized that I was at least going to make the team, because I was the only tight end.
And Bavaro would exceed all expectations in his first year with the Giants, tallying 37 receptions for over 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. He would be named to the All-Rookie team for his strong performance during the 1985 season.
That's a good catch, Mark. Big play, son. That's the way to go. Hey, those guys are going to beat you around. You got to learn to beat their hands off you. You know what I mean?
So all of a sudden to come into this atmosphere with a guy like Bill, and I figured it out pretty quickly that it was a special group of guys and that they were going to have some success in the future.
You guys make the playoffs in '85, and the Giants have a home playoff game, and you guys beat the San Francisco 49ers. What was it like that day in the stadium? I mean, it's your rookie year, but this is a huge event for the Giants to have a home playoff game. It had been, decades since they last had one.
Samms looks over the middle. He's going end zone. It is complete to the ball.
To be in Giant Stadium, in New York with these guys, some legendary names who I'd come to realize who they were as I was playing with them that year, and to have that kind of success. And I was just a kid, maybe 22 or 23, and I'd never experienced anything like it. I did start to realize what a playoff win meant to the franchise. It was phenomenal.
When you lost to the Bears in the '85 playoff game in Chicago in the wind, you know, that was the coronation, and they go on to win the Super Bowl and they beat the Patriots. But when you left the field that day, did you say to yourself, we can beat these guys? Because there was a lot of things that happened in that game where the Giants created some of their own self-inflicted wounds. Not to take anything away from Chicago, they were a great team. But did you kind of walk off the field and say, God, you know, we could play with these guys?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You know, they had this great 4-6 defense, diamond defense, whatever, and, you know, no one could do anything against it. And, you know, to their credit, they were a great team, and, you know, they started to find their stride and home field advantage. It was cold, and we just wore down after a while, but we never had a thought that we didn't belong there. And I remember Bill turned around to me and probably to some other people and just said, get ready for next year, start working for next year, because we're going to be back here. And that was the attitude of everybody. And I think there was kind of a feeling amongst everyone that, you know, we weren't just going to have a regular season, or we weren't going to have a season where we were just hoping to make it to the playoffs. I mean, we weren't really loud about it. You know, braggadocio wasn't really a big thing with the Giants, but in the back of everybody's mind, I really feel that we all believe that, you know, we could win a Super Bowl.
And 1986 would become a magical year in Giants history. Bavaro evolved into Phil Simms' main target with over 1,000 yards receiving. He earned his first Pro Bowl selection, and his tough, smash-mouth style epitomized what Big Blue was all about.
He was a tough guy, and he would fit in, you know, perfectly, because he really didn't have a whole lot to say. He was serious about playing the game, and he was just a tough SOB.
I think when someone thinks of Mark Bavaro, that's what they would remember. Toughness and physicality and giant blue guy.
I tell you, he's a stone-faced, that Bavaro now. You know what the hell he's thinking. I'd hate to have to fight that son of a gun.
That's one tough, talented football player right there. I'll tell you one thing, I was glad he was on our team. I really was.
Bavaro's ability to play through pain was stuff of legend. After breaking his jaw and having it wired shut in a game versus New Orleans, he would return to play the entire second half and score the winning touchdown.
Where did that toughness come from?
I just think whatever someone's pain threshold is, and for certain body parts, it's different. You know, for me, you know, those other things weren't really that bothersome.
How you doing, kid? I'm proud of you. Tough guy, kid.
How'd you keep your strength up when you had your jaw wired shut?
We had a blender, and you mixed up food, and on the road, Jimmy Madalino was one of our trainers, assistant trainers, and he brought along the blender, and we went in our room, and he would just blend up some eggplant parmesan, and I'd sip it through a straw, and it was the best stuff I ever had.
Tell me a little bit about, you know, the Niner game, and you must run into Giant fans constantly about that, carrying all the Niners. I mean, it's showing up on the video board in the stadium. You flip on NFL films, there's great plays, and there's that play.
Complete to Bavaro, down to the 35, still on his feet to the 30, down to the 25, down to the 20. He's got 4 men on his back and gets down to the 17.
The only thing that was going through my mind was, why haven't they tackled me yet? Because Ronnie Lott was one of the first guys to hit me.
And the tight end fights his way inside the 30, and a single effort to the 18-yard line, a solitary effort by Bavaro.
He was a guy that was sort of the standard bearer for the attitude of the team.
That play epitomizes how tough Mark was and how we wanted to be as a team.
This is classic and vintage Bavaro. This is what he does the best. He is just one tough cookie. He just carries 49ers all the way inside the 20, carry them for 10 yards to get the first down and set up a possible Giant score.
And he did it on national TV, you know, just an unbelievable player. You know, it's still the signature play of that game is that.
If there's ever one play that a player will ever be noted for, I think that is the signature play for Mark Bavaro. But also it signified that we had a pretty doggone potent offense that could get the job done.
Your second year in the league, and you win the conference championship, and the party in Giant Stadium is unbelievable. The Mara family is going to their first ever Super Bowl. What are you thinking as you're in the locker room and you've taken that step, knowing that the job's not done? The object is to win the thing, not just to get there.
I just remember thinking, okay, you know, next, who's next?
Next up, the Denver Broncos in Pasadena. What are you thinking as that game's sort of unfolding?
That game kind of reminded me of a lot of the games in that '86 season. We would run our game plan, and everybody knew it, but you couldn't stop it because we were good. And we were losing at halftime, 10-9. There was no sense of panic. We just figured this is the way our season's been going. Just going to go back out, keep beating on them, and sooner or later they're going to break, and that's what happened.
Sims has the ball. Sims throws, end zone, Bavaro, touchdown!
What did it mean to you to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl?
Looking back on it, it was pretty cool. You know, but at the time, the only thing it meant to me was that it was the go-ahead touchdown. Because, like I said, we were losing 10-9, and the great part about that touchdown is somebody took a picture of it head-on, of me head-on. So you got me kneeling down, giving thanks for scoring a touchdown, and behind me you can see the scoreboard on the other side of the field. That's the only meaning it really had to me, was that it was the start of the turning of the tide, and we never really looked back from that.
Sims has the ball. He is going to pass. He does. It is complete. Yes! He hung on to the ball. Bavaro hung on to the ball, and McConkey came down with it off his fingertips. Bavaro to McConkey in the end zone.
The game was pretty much a foregone conclusion, but still, you know, you wanted to get touchdowns when you could, and I didn't want to have to go back to the sideline and face Parcells, knowing I dropped a surefire touchdown right in my hands. And so when I saw the ball bounce off my head and fall into McConkey's hands, it didn't fall into his hand. He was all over it.
Exactly.
You know?
He wanted it.
Yeah, he wanted it. Thank God, you know. Thank God he's like that, because he caught it, and I was probably happier than he was.
The Super Bowl champions are the Giants. Everybody's dream in football.
I had a lot of good friends in that team. You know, we really loved each other. You know, we were a very close group.
When you think of Parcells, you said that you kind of got him right off the bat.
Yeah, I got him from the beginning. He was pretty, you know, to me, he was a pretty easy guy to understand. You know, do your work. You know, keep your mouth shut. Don't self-aggrandize. All those things. I mean, I loved him. You know, right from the get-go. You know, that's the kind of guy I wanted to play for. When I think of Bill Parcells, I think he's a funny guy, and he would crack me up. I wouldn't laugh out loud, but I'd be inside, man. I'd be cracking up to some of the comments that he would say to people.
Make sure you remind them. They might try something big early.
Yeah.
Okay? Last time I told you guys that, you forgot to remember. Remember?
All right, so you become a cult figure. Now you're on the cover of Sports Illustrated. You got the nickname Rambo. I mean, how did you take to all that for a guy that didn't seek any of it?
Fortunately, back then, you know, you could kind of ignore it, you know, which is what I did. I shied away from it. I didn't really want any part of it. I mean, I liked the respect the fans gave me. You know, I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, it meant a lot to me, as it would to anybody. A lot of people say, you know, you were tough, Mark, and I was tough because I knew I had to be tough for Jersey guys like Bill Parcells, for all the other guys in the stands, you know, who were expecting a lot, and especially for my Italians out there, you know. That was probably the biggest connection I had with Giant fans. They're all Italians around here, and it was to be able to perform and please those guys. It was like getting the approval of the big kids in the neighborhood, you know, of your father, of your uncles. They were supporting me, and they liked me, you know, so I wanted to please them.
Mark made everybody around him inherit that same mindset. I mean, his mindset was so infectious that he was a no-nonsense guy, tough as nails. I played against him in college. He was the same way. Just go out, lunch pail, grind it out, knock your face in the dirt, doesn't even look at you, just goes back, just to line up to do it again. And it was just like a grindstone. No matter what, if you hit him hard, he just got up and you knew he was coming right back at you.
Early in the 1989 season, Bavaro would suffer a knee injury that would threaten his career and sideline him for the rest of the year.
I was coming back from a big injury. I mean, I don't think many people were expecting much of me.
But the tough-minded tight end would valiantly return to the field to be a key contributor to the Giants' historic season in 1990.
Sims throws, end zone, Bavaro, touchdown! Sims takes the pitch, throws, complete, touchdown, Bavaro!
In '90, you didn't know who was going to step up We knew that we were big and strong, and we were going to be hard to beat. It was really one of the greatest team efforts I've ever seen in sports.
But after storming out to a 10-0 start, Bavaro and the Giants would suffer a setback when Phil Simms went down with a season-ending injury.
It was a great loss, obviously, to lose your quarterback. I mean, Phil was great, but Jeff Hostetler, he knew the offense as well as Phil. I mean, he ran the offense as well as Phil, and he added a little extra dimension with his mobility.
Hostetler's trying to pass, runs away from trouble, turns upfield, runs to the sideline and throws on the run, and completes to Bavaro.
Giants are trailing by a point. All depends on Matt Barr. Fans are on their feet and screaming. Snap, spot, kick is away. It's got the distance. It is good. Good.
And the Giants are going to Tampa Bay. It's over for the Three Pinks. It's over.
And at Super Bowl 25 in Tampa, with the Giants trailing the Bills in the fourth quarter, the veteran tight end would step up when his team needed him most.
3rd and 7 to the 26. Bills by 2, 13:56 to play. And Hostetler throws, and it's caught by Bavaro for a big first down to the 43.
He is a money player, Mark Bavaro.
I was very glad to be able to help, and I was more than happy to actually win the game.
Over the middle, Bavaro again for a first down to the 27-yard line.
Hostetler and Bavaro continued to connect on the drive, setting up Matt Barr's go-ahead field goal. And the rest is history, as the Bills' Scott Norwood would miss the kick at the end of regulation.
No good. Wide right.
Giants win. Giants win. Giants have won. Super Bowl 25.
I mean, I honestly felt it was the culmination of my career. I just considered it was the cherry on top of my NFL Sunday. I lucked out. I mean, I couldn't have come to a better place with a better coach, with better players, and especially, you know, with a better owner. When I see the helmet, you know, I think of me. You know, it's like I'm looking at myself. That's how, you know, I think all those guys who were on those teams in those years feel, because it was really a special group of guys, you know, and it was a special time for New York. I was only here 6 years. It wasn't like I played here for 15, 20 years, but those were 6 special years, you know, for the franchise. And because of that, you know, I'll always feel like a Giant.
Number 89, Mark Bavaro.